So, first track on the album, Cops and Robbers. This is a great story with how this one came to be.
Never meant to be on it.
Never meant to be on it. And
because you were late.
Because I was late, you happened to be a bit bored.
So I got to the studio on time and Jake texted me and was like, I'm running, 20 minutes late. I was like, oh, that's fine. So I was playing around with the guitar, started messing around with some chords and wrote this whole song before you arrived. Didn't really think anything of it because I was just, this is quite a cool story and, like the way it sings and all the rest of it. And then I showed it to you when you came in. I said, I've been tinkering around with this idea and this might be, something for the future. And then you were like...
I was like, that's got to go on.
Yeah.
That has got to go on. Yeah. And it's funny, like I've heard, stories of a similar thing happening with other artists and producers, but it hasn't really happened with... I don't think it's happened to me like that, where it's like we're literally at the start of the recording process. I'm setting up and you just go, and you're kind of tinkering away. I'm like, what's that? He's like, well, it's just something I just wrote. I was like, I just thought it was like immediately great. I just thought the story was brilliant. It was catchy. It was immediate.
And weirdly, kind of, now now I've listened back to a lot. It's like the soundtrack of the album.
Yeah.
Which is mad.
Yeah.
It was never going to be on there.
No, it's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, the album would have worked without it, sure. But I just thought it was like... But it's weird for how easy you found to write it. I just thought it was such great songwriting, how well put together the story is and the two different sides. Maybe you can explain more.
Well, just quickly, when you say how easy it was to write, that's how I used to write songs. Just not thinking about anything, not thinking about playing it live, not thinking if anyone's going to hear it, just sitting down with a guitar, 4 chords and some words. So I think because I got back to my natural environment where I started, these things then just happen, And since we've made this album, now I feel so much more myself again. I find writing these songs so easy, What was your question?
No. So
about the story.
Yeah. No, I was just going to say, so the song's called Cops and Robbers, and somehow you managed to turn that, what could be that's a bit of a fun title, and put a lot of meaning behind it. Explain the story of...
So it's a story about 2 friends growing up, 2 kids, and, their game is playing cops and robbers, and one has a much tougher upbringing than the other and drifts onto the wrong side of the law while the other becomes the law and becomes a police officer. And then the story develops that, one friend is getting in trouble and the other's kind of really trying to look out for him, but he's also trying to do his job, and it just keeps escalating and getting more problematic. And obviously I won't ruin the end of the story, but
you'll have to listen to it for that.
You have to listen to that. But it was I just loved writing it. And it is based on, loosely based on a true story as well, which I think why it was so easy to write. And yeah, it's, there was a nod to, some of Springsteen stuff on Nebraska in there. And yeah, it was, and there was such an innocence about calling it Cops and Robbers as well, because that's when you're kids.
And it's got a double meaning. It's great.
And then it goes into about growing up and it being really tough. But the production stuff that we did on that was
a lot of fun because when you present a song like that, it immediately gives you imagery. So, we were able to sort of try things. Your son came in and he had a toy car.
Yeah.
And we were like, should we just try and make a sound out of this? Yeah. So we just rolled it across the tom, and it made this...
Tom the drum. That sounds like you rolled it like as a guy called Tom.
Sorry, Tom. A tom-tom.
Yeah.
And it just made this really cool whoosh sound, which... I mean,
it could have been
terrible, but it just, and I kind of was expecting it to be terrible. if it was terrible, I still was going to get it in there just so it was in there.
Yeah,
but it
yeah.
sounded really cool.
Yeah, that was such a great moment. There were so many times of that in the studio.
And then when you do that once, it then opens up your imagination.
Yeah.
Before we started working on this record, you know, you mentioned Johnny Cash and your influences that you wanted to sound more like they've always been big influences, but they haven't quite found their way 100% into what you do because, you know, you're working in a modern world, make you feel like that's
things
what
sound
people
very
want.
polished.
Yeah,
yeah.
So when you presented the song, and I think you had O's at the start, and then we changed them to ums.
Yeah.
That just seemed like obvious for me.
Yeah.
That's what you should do, and also you had done that in Stronger in the bridge.
Yeah. It'd always been in there kind of, we'd put...
Been subtly in there. This was the first, it's like the first thing of the album.
Yeah.
It's like, you know, it's not even subtle in the mix. It's there.
Yeah. Well, it became the hook for the whole song. And it was, I mean, I can't believe how that song just fell out of the sky, really. It's just suddenly there. And it was a real, I don't know if we'd actually started recording. Had we? Was that the first day?
I think it was the first day that.
Yeah. So it kind of, it's got me really excited when we started doing these things.
I think it was literally like, we should start with that one.
Yeah.
It wasn't what we were supposed to start with, but
I do remember when we finished, like, you know, we had all the takes there and we both listened back to it and both like, wow, this is starting to sound quite special.
It just
it's cool.
had a feeling very quickly that this was good. And it's like, it's written like a pop song, but also like a poem. So it's a really unusual
I think that's what I always struggled with when I started. I could either write a story song or it'd be a catchy pop song. And I found it so hard to write a catchy story song. I think this is the first time I've actually really done it because they are really hard to write.
I think that's really good assessment. I mean, you can look on Love and Life in England, like there are literally story song, pop song, story, like they are.
Yeah.
You know, sometimes they overlap with the catchiness, but like...
Well, things like Morning I'm Gone, there is like a loose story within it. And
but it's more like a narrative as opposed to like a story-driven song.
It doesn't, it wouldn't read as well like as a poem, for example. But yeah, as I said,
Well, that's growth. I love that.
And it's just being relaxed and in the right environment and feeling like yourself again. Because it's very easy to get lost in it, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it feels good to be back.